And now for something completely different. So we're going to talk about retail, and we have a panel of end users who are using RFID, and our moderator for the panel is Dean Frew. Dean is the CTO and Senior Vice President of RFID Solutions for SML. Dean will introduce his panel, so ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Dean Frew.
Good morning, everyone. Once again, it's exciting to partner with RFID Journal. We appreciate Mark and his whole team and what they do. Real quick overview of who we are. So SML is a RFID technology company. We did over 1 billion tags last year for retailers around the world and have well over 1,000 stores live with our software. Our focus is on item level RFID, and today we have a really neat opportunity. We've got two of our customers here, one from Europe and one from the US, and they're going to share a little bit about how they're using RFID to change the way they do business in this new era of retailing. So first off, I want to introduce Greg Czerpak, who is with Lids, and then also Johan Stenström, who is with Stadium, which is a sporting goods company in Sweden. So guys, come on out and we'll start the panel. Thanks. So Greg, why don't you introduce yourself and your company, and then Johan, you can do the same, yeah?
Sure, good morning. Greg Czerpak. I work for Lids Sports Group, which is a headwear, apparel, and accessory retailer based out of Indianapolis. We are about 1,200 brick and mortar locations and 2 distribution facilities, one in Indianapolis and one in Toronto. Our stores are primarily in the US, Canada, and Puerto Rico. I manage basically everything that's inventory related, from the purchasing, inventory movement, productivity, storage of inventory across those locations, as well as multiple banners. We've got mall-based retailers that sell headwear that are fairly small in size, but can be large in volume. We also run a series of fan shops, as well as a few .coms, and we have a shop-in-shop relationship with Macy's in the US, and about 150 stores. And we actively manage at any given point about 170,000 SKUs.
Okay, great. How many items typically do you go through in a year, turnover?
Oh my goodness. Well, we do about 2.5 million units of headwear. And on the apparel side, it can be probably up to 400,000 or 500,000, depending on some seasonality. And in our business, one of the other influencers into performance is wins and losses, which is appropriate to follow Phil as you talk about that. So the teams at the top of the standings tend to drive customer demand and business as much as the products do themselves.
That's great. Johan.
Oh, yeah, hi. So I'm Johan Stenström. I'm from Stadium, located in Sweden, and we have about 170 stores in Sweden, Finland, and Germany. We are the market leader in Scandinavia, and we have a turnover of about $500 million. We sell about 35 million pieces each year. So I'm the supply chain developer for Stadium and oversees all development throughout the supply chain.
That's great.
Yeah.
So these companies have got very interesting projects that they've run, and the reason, would be good is to share with the audience kind of why you looked at item level RFID and describe a little bit about what got you to this place. Greg, you want to?
Sure. We started speaking with SML and Dean on a pilot that was a few years old at Lids, and one of the business complexities that we have is around what we call hot market, or the like World Series, Super Bowl, the event-related piece of our business. This is by far the most difficult component of our business, and we knew that if we could reduce the amount of time that it took for us to analyze information, sales that were coming in a given location or within a market, from hours to minutes, that we knew that there was a revenue goal that we could exceed and capture. We also knew that during the chaos that follows an event, that there was a high likelihood that we didn't have a good understanding of what products remained. So there was also a margin component or a markdown avoidance component. So we partnered with Dean, built a test case around last year's World Series. And to refresh, last year's World Series went to 7 games. There was it came down to the final game. There was Los Angeles Dodgers and Houston Astros. So two very large markets and 2 markets that are far apart. And we mobilized a test, given a subset of our stores within both markets, a subset of our products within both markets, to really see if we could put this theory to test. And it came down to the final inning. We were on planes going all across the country en route to Houston, and what we did in Houston there was we took a subset of our apparel products and we tagged them upstream with one of our suppliers, and the visibility of the product that we had was far superior to anything that we had seen before. To give you a little bit of perspective of what the day after in one of these events looks like, it's a lot like a flea market with products on tables and customers throwing things over their shoulders and racing to the register.
Especially in Houston.
Quite a bit of chaos,
Okay.
and they had never won before, absolutely. So what we were able to capture in this group of stores was basically cycle counts on the quarter hour. So every 15 minutes we could, through subtraction or really through deduction of what wasn't no longer in the store, we could determine down to the size level and store level of what products were being sold and obviously what was being desired by our customer. That immediate feedback for us is light years faster than we've been able to understand in the past. So we then, instead of being on site and counting ourselves or calling stores and working with IT to patch together sales, we were able to get, with confidence, understand what product was moving so we could reinvest in that product and then conversely slow down or discontinue the products that weren't working.
Describe a little bit about what that response cycle looked like for your team as we went from 8 in the morning in the Galleria in Houston to back to your supplier, and describe a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. To paint perspective here, after an event, the amount of business that you do in 30 days, 90% of that is done in the first 72 hours. So there is an extraordinarily long tail, and those sales tend to come in at a lower ticket, obviously because the product's less desirable. So to answer your question specifically, we have the doors open, we have a line outside of several stores. Customers come in, they begin checking out, and this is desirable product. Kids want to wear it to school the next day. Folks want to wear it to work and what have you. So by about 8:30 that morning, we had a read on, again, head-to-head product testing is very important in the retail space. So A and B, which one sells more than the other? What's the relationship? What we learned pretty quickly was that what we anticipated from a sizing perspective wasn't what was selling. And if you just think about this intuitively for a moment, the demographics around each market are unique. As Dean pointed out, Houston had never won a championship before.
And rightly so, I would say.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So to pattern after any prior market or results, we were able to get real-time Houston-specific feedback in this situation.
Yeah, that's great. Great story. So Johan,
Yeah.
why don't you describe a little bit about what kind of got you guys to this place and some of the business benefits stuff that you've seen through the project.
Yeah. So we started, just to start in the beginning, earlier we measured our stock balance, the financial stock balance, and that was always okay.
Describe what that is.
And yeah, that would be that the value of everything you have and the value of the overstock and the value of the understock, that will equal out. So that would be, looking in retrospective, that would be like driving a car and you crash one side to the left and one to the right, and the car would be fine, but that's not the truth. So our financial stock balance, that would be 98%. So we're thinking everything is fine. But that's not what the feedback from our stores say, a total other thing. So we started investigating, and we started measuring inventory accuracy. And the first time we did that, we realized, okay, we're at 73% in inventory accuracy. So we're seeing some overtime in the future. So we went from an understanding of 98% down to 73%. So we knew we need to do something right away. And I've always had an interest in technology, and I've followed RFID for 10 years or so. And could see that now the technology is, the price has come down, and it can deliver on its promise. So we started the pilot with SML, and instantly we choose 2 test stores, and then the average inventory accuracy was 65%, and instantly in the first scan we went up to 96%, and that was just amazing to see, and to have, you could rely on that value. So that was amazing.
What was the response inside the organization? I mean, we always talk about the first scan is the one where you probably should have a stiff drink before you look at the results, okay?
Yeah.
What was the response inside the organization when you guys came forward with that first scan data?
Yeah.
Was there disbelief? Was there,
yeah, well,
they were going to give you a drug test? What was going on? Okay, what was going on?
Yeah, I've always tried to tell them that don't have high expectations of the first scan. We need to give this a couple of weeks. But that was just an instant trust, I would say, in that in the technology, in the system. And if I could share a short story about the first day of the pilot, my belief is to always be a lot on site and looking at what's happening. So the first day I'm out on the sales floor configuring some devices. And I can see this woman coming up to one of our sales personnel, and she were asking for a couple of skates, a pair of skates. And they started looking at the sales floor for that pair of skates, and they couldn't find it. And I could hear the salesperson saying, it's probably in the back stock. So she went away to the back stock, and I thought this would be a perfect try for the technology to see what will the technology, will it deliver? So I went up to the woman and asked, what are you looking for? And she said, a pair of skates in this size. And in the app we're using, we have a Geiger functionality. So I turned that on, and that means that if the article is present somewhere, it will start beeping, and it will beep faster and faster. And so I turned it on. I could see instantly that we have one in the sales floor. And the good thing is that if it says one, it's going to be one. I could feel confident in that. And instantly it started beeping. So we looked around and it was on the other aisle, on the other side of the aisle. And I sold that skates. That was my first sale. And later on, the salesperson came back. So, sorry, it's not in the back stock. I've already sold it. And that person later, a few minutes later, she came to me and said, that device you're holding, can I have that? Can I use that? So they took to the technology quite fast.
Your associate came to you.
Yeah. So
that's great.
Yeah, so it was great.
Yeah, great story. Greg, on your side, at Lids is part of Genesco, so you guys are part, you have Journey and Johnston Murphy and Lids and then Foot Locker, right? So as you exposed this to the executive team, what was some of the responses that you saw when you guys talked about what you were able to see during this? And you used the word chaotic, and I would say that that's probably mild considering what I saw my team do. But with you guys were there too. But what was their response as you guys described what was going on in Houston?
Yeah, we're a retailer, so not surprisingly, we're a room full of plagiarists, so everybody wants a piece of it. And when we start talking about being able to lower the overall inventory commitment, not sacrifice any revenue. In fact, in this situation, our case study proves that we are able to capture additional revenue with less inventory. In the retail space, that's pretty close to the holy grail. So what we had learned pretty quickly was some of the other people at the table raising their hand in distribution. And when you're dealing with moving of hundreds of thousands of units in and out of a warehouse network, you know, 0.5% in error can be meaningful, and certainly across a vast network of, you know, or nodes within the network, 0.5% overage here and underage here can become pretty impactful in the long term. Another big initiative for us, and I think most of the folks in the retail space, is the concept of omnichannel. So engage with the customer where and when and how that he or she wants to engage with you. So now we can expose the total inventory across the network with confidence to be able to fulfill an online sale, for instance. We now have 1,200 mini warehouses located within, I think it's 85% of the US population lives within 30 minutes of a LID's excuse me, location. So now we can, with confidence, turn over to fulfill those sales and also lower or shorten the service time to get the product to the customer. We can also then minimize our freight expenses. So this becomes a very profitable mechanism across the organization.
Yeah, and Johan, for you, you've got a mix of products. I mean, describe a little bit about what that mix looks like inside Stadium to give people perspective, the audience your perspective of kind of what's in those stores.
Yeah, so it could be, we have sporting apparel and equipment, and a big part is shoes, but it could go from shoelace to kayak, so it's a broad spectrum of articles, and it's not that funny when the buying department saying, okay, in 1 month we're going to have kayaks at our warehouse. And okay, so we need to have a flexible, reliable solution for that. So that's basically how the mix, a big mix of articles, and in a store there would be around 7,000 SKUs. One thing when looking at the data from RFID, and we started looking at replenishment from the backstock to the sales floor. And when talking to the store managers, they were very confident in saying, Johan, we got this. The inventory accuracy is the main thing. Replenishment is fine. But when looking at the data, we could see hundreds of SKUs in the backstock that weren't present in the sales floor, and I was just amazed. How can that be? So that instantly we started working harder on the replenishment part, which is so important. And you can say, I'll come back to that again. The confidence, if it says that it's 0 on the sales floor, it's going to be that.
You can't get a false positive with item level RFID.
No, and the comfort in knowing that the data is right, then you can act, then you can innovate, come up with smart solutions. So the base thing, and like omnichannel that you're talking about, Greg, is we are realizing, of course, also how important that is, but we can't go there until we have the inventory accuracy to do so. So that's the baseline to start developing.
And just give you a little bit of perspective on kind of the solution. In both of these cases, we used handhelds only. So we used handhelds from our partner at Zebra with our application on Android devices. So very simple. We worked with the IT teams in both organizations to get on the network. We used Microsoft Azure as our cloud environment. Extremely easy to deploy, I think. I think we did tests the day before in both cases, and we're up and running very quickly. So might be beneficial just to kind of, for all of us RFID geeks in the room, give you some perspective of what we did there. As we move to the kind of where things are going, you know, you guys have had a chance to soak on this now. You're looking at, holy cow, this transformation from SKU level data to item level data, and what does that do? And you know, Johan, can you talk a little bit about how it's changing the way you guys think about two things? One, how you think about what you can do with inventory data, and number two, what you can do as far as servicing customers. You know, so how is that changing now that you're looking at this new world with 98, 96%?
It's a world of difference. Being able to, we didn't realize how easy it is to misplace an item. And that's something that we're realizing now, and that can be in the delivery, and we have extra staff that perhaps doesn't know where to place things, and they will end up in a corner somewhere, and they can be there for 6 months or so, and that won't happen now. We can instantly find the articles, and earlier we didn't have the confidences. Since we're at 70% and in our test store 65%, if the ERP says we have one, we can't be sure that. And how long are we going to look for that item before we give up? But if our RFID scanner says that we have one, then it's going to be that we have one, and it will help us find it. So that was the answer to the second. That was the first.
Let me respond. How does this change the way you look at inventory as far as response time? I mean, Greg mentioned it. We're going to ask him to do the same thing. But for you, how does that, the responsiveness of your system, your supply chain?
Really important, as I spoke a bit about earlier. We need to have that inventory accuracy. That's like a baseline for innovation and for lowering cost. So we are looking at shrinking the size of stores, for instance. And doing that, we need to shrink the number of items for each SKU that's in the store. And we couldn't do that earlier because we weren't sure about the stock. So
you had a lot of safety stock in your store.
A lot of safety stock, and we shipped it weeks in advance sometimes, just to make sure. So now we're going to shorten the time from our warehouse to start working just in time. If we have a campaign starting tomorrow, earlier we could send it weeks in advance. Now we can send it right away, and we can see that it has arrived. And we can do that in the right volume, lower volume, because we need to shrink. We have kind of large stores and large back stocks, and we need to shrink that to be able to be cost efficient in this competitive environment.
Yeah. Greg, how about you?
Yeah, the great job describing, I think, some of the benefits that come with real-time inventory visibility and confidence, and it enables, the technology enables so much. And I think to maybe answer the second part, an unintended or a consequence for us, or maybe an unforeseen learning, was we went into the test understanding that we would have this visibility, that we could service the customer better, fulfill online orders. But one of the conversations that we've had internally since has been, what about the customer who's looking for the immediate pickup or the immediate satisfaction that comes with purchasing a product? So what we've begun discussing is, when you enter our site and you're looking for a specific product, we would be happy to ship it to you. We'd be happy now to expose to you which stores in the chain have that in that particular size, even to allow reservation of that item. And I think we can turn it into something that could perhaps help to drive traffic into the stores. So now you see in some other, there are retailers in the US that are trying to combat some of the traffic declines that we've seen in malls and in shopping centers. And one of the tools or techniques that many retailers are doing is giving advantageous pricing if you're willing to pick up in store. So think about the situation where, from a retailer perspective, we're going to sell item X. Item X is $50. We make $20 on it. We can ship it to your home and invest in an additional incremental shipping expense. Or if you're looking for, I've got tickets for tomorrow's game, I don't have time to wait, just tell me where it is, and I may have to drive across town an extra 5 miles or so, but there's no incremental expense from the retailer perspective. We've already got the product there. So now we can begin to direct customers to...
With a level of confidence.
With a level of confidence. So I think, just an unforeseen learning for us was, how do we leverage that network, the existing network that was already in place, to be able to expose the appropriate products to online customers.
I mean, one of the things that we've seen now is that a couple of years ago, we had one of our customers, Tesco, who mentioned that they moved to a pull model instead of a push model. So this, Johan, goes back to what you were saying, is that they moved to a place where they knew what they had, they knew what they needed, and they were able to completely change and flip where the demand signals are coming from in the supply chain. Instead of the supply chain, as you said, pushing kayaks to the store, they're basically able to sit back. And what they ended up doing is reducing 10% of inventory. So back to shrinking stores, thinning out their stores. But think about what that does to your balance sheet. Taking 10% of inventory out and keeping your sales actually increasing through that process. Okay, last question that I would like you guys to share with the audience is that what are some of the things, if there are retailers in the room, and there are many retailers in the room today who are investigating this journey, kind of, Greg, what's some advice that you would give them as far as just internal to a retailer, right? Forget about that us technology folks are in the room. You're talking retailer to retailer. What advice would you give them about what to do and all the components that we've talked about in the past? Yeah.
Sure. I think this one, maybe more so than any technology that I've been a part of in my retail career, this one needs to be socialized. There's so many stakeholders, and I can tell you just on our personal story, we've tousled back and forth with who the appropriate sponsorship should be. You know, Dean, in conversations I've had with you, this is certainly not a project that begins and ends in IT. In fact, it's far from that. And we've got our operations staff, we've got our distribution center and supply chain folks, obviously the inventory side. We've got so many people with vested interest in understanding how to use it. And again, it's probably when you start connecting the 1 + 1 = 3, getting the whole group in the room to say, what's the benefit you can gain? How do we deliver that benefit, exceed that benefit? And then I would say, you know, maybe just lastly to punctuate that point is I would still suggest that you land on firm sponsorship. If projects like these that touch so many groups, often you can get that project so far, and then it becomes hard to get over the goal line, so to speak, because do you own it? Do I own it? Which piece do I own? So I think just making sure that you've got firm sponsorship, but have adequately or maybe over-socialized the benefits of the technology.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice. So, Johan, how about you?
Great. I have about the same experience, and so I would say keep people engaged in why we're doing that. Make sure that they understand. And so for example, we had a tagging party in the stores, and we are tagging in our warehouse as well. So I brought the people from our warehouse to the tagging party, and we finished off doing the first scan, RFID scan, with the warehouse people, just to make them see the benefits and understand what's happening. And I think that's a key thing, because quality in the process, quality in all process is so important. If you don't have that, then you won't see the benefits. And that made them realize and take that they're part of a chain, and it's important that if that won't work, the rest won't work either. So that's one thing. Being on site a lot, understanding, watching what's happening, that's really important. And also, I would say, when we choose the test stores for this pilot, we were looking at also store managers that were willing to develop, to be open to change. And that's, I think it's also important for the success. Otherwise, you have someone that's not interested, it's not going to work. You need to have them on board.
Yeah, I think just from our perspective is we see that as being the common thread for successful projects. You know, whether we're the ones providing the technology or someone else is that those stakeholders who are all around the table, who are all agreed that this is the outcome and the benefit that we're going to see on the other side, if they're organized around that and are focused on their goal of benefits, really see that. Well, one thing I want to do is just thank you guys. We're going to do some Q&A, but you know, Greg, both you and Johan represent retail organizations that are really looking at this new era of retailing, and fantastic organizations to work with, both of you guys, and just it's exciting for me to see the way you've gone about this, the way you've brought in your other stakeholders to do this. So I thank you again today for this panel. And Mark, if you come on out, we'll do some Q&A from the audience, okay? Thank you, guys.
Sure, thank you.
Thanks.
Do we have any questions for our panel? You guys did a really good job. Okay, we got one here.
Thanks, guys. Obviously, you've seen a lot of benefit from just knowing the presence of inventory on the sales floor. Have you talked about maybe expanding that into knowing exactly where it is on the sales floor so that there aren't, customers coming in looking for it in a particular place, and then it's maybe somebody else has put it somewhere else, and then they miss it and you miss a sale? Have you gotten into that level of detail yet?
Yeah, I would say we are definitely looking in that, and so for this we are mid-pilot right now, but we start simple. We make sure the only goal for this pilot is to a proof of concept that we can raise inventory accuracy. But I have already seen when looking at the data, I can see these articles are starting to sell, and I really found it interested to see, okay, where are they located? Why are they starting to sell? So we are definitely in that, and I think that's that will be the next step. But I think one advice if you're starting a pilot is to keep it simple to start, to get a baseline to start from, and then adding on this. And there's so many layers of benefits that you can add.
Greg?
Yeah, it's a good question. Your store footprint is significantly larger than ours. But one thing that we learned through our pilot specific to the placement of product is our back rooms are probably 5% perhaps of the total floor space. But making sure that those products make it out onto the sales floor is rule number one. You can't sell it if the customer can't see it. Window placement can start to be a piece of that as well. So once you combine that with what is selling and working and driving the perception and response from the customer, then you can get into all the psychology behind retail of eye level and in the windows and next of other things that make you more money, which is kind of the extent we've taken it so far.
Okay. Question here?
Hello, I've really enjoyed the presentation and wanted to ask if you guys, within your experience, if you're looking towards integrating the vendors or suppliers of the products that you guys sell, asking them or having them tag the products as vendors to you, so incorporating them into the supply chain and sort of handing off or requiring or making them participants in this initiative, but as a vendor, so that you can also receive products. You were talking about tagging products at stores and at your CDs, but is it something that you guys have talked about? And if SML also obviously provides and integrates and makes this grow, but looking back. Thank you.
Greg, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. We have talked about that. I think that is the ultimate pivot point between making something that's on a small or medium scale to a grand scale. In the World Series example for us, we have no other product that's faster. We don't know who's going to win. We've got local printers and we've got products on chartered flights making it from one city to the next. It's really chaos. Even the pre-work that we've done with the vendor and the supplier in that situation was putting the tag on. We knew this was going to be a women's white extra small. You can still do that work without knowing if it's Dodgers or Astros. So you can even embed the technology into that tagging. Obviously, there's other ways to do it that are probably a little bit less noticeable and less disruptive that you can then build into your supplier's typical practice to help limit incremental expenses. But it's a great point, and even in our controlled example, one that we were pretty mindful of.
Yeah. We really think that would be important also. Tagging at source, as far back in the supply chain as possible. And as SML are currently printing our price tickets, to flip that to RFID-enabled price stickers would be easy. That wouldn't be that difficult. Then we have a lot of other vendors that we are not in control over it, but we are trying to influence them hard to be able to get them to tag. Otherwise, our strategy is always to tag as early in the supply chain as possible. So at our warehouse, we will tag everything that's not tagged already.
And I would say that on the projects, projects in retail, there are some retailers that are needing to tag product because their wholesale partners or their vendors are not doing that. But the vast majority of projects and the ones that are successful in vertically integrated brands are all doing source tagging. And yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to add one other thing, and I apologize for not including it in the original response. We partnered with one specific vendor, and I would say, as you consider getting that started, you need a catalyst. So one vendor who now can boast that, hey, these guys understand our inventory and sales situation, it resulted in more inbound receipts for me. The other vendors will then be very interested as they consider losing share of business within your store. So, but you definitely need one solid partner, I think, to begin down that journey.
Yeah, because I would say that journey, having walked through that with you, Greg, is that it was, hey, we're going to do this, and the first one in the door to Greg's team in Indianapolis was the one who got the prize, okay? And so now the others are looking at this saying, holy cow, I don't want to be left out. And to Greg's point, they have a very, with 1,200 doors, and especially the licensing deals. I mean, Greg didn't mention it much, but the licensing that they have in place is phenomenal. And it gives them quite a bit of leverage on some of those brands. So it's quite interesting to watch that behavior amongst the ecosystem once somebody starts doing source tagging. And, there is no difference placing a price ticket on a garment or on a hat with RFID or not. You're still having to place it on the right garment. It's the only thing that's different is what's embedded in the paper. And so it is the simplest way to do that. It is the way the world is moving inside this space, and we continue to see more and more adoption around the world. So, yeah.
Okay, we have time for another question. We have a question over here. Can we get a mic down there?
Thank you. Could you give us an idea of what the time frame for return on investment in all the capital, software, personnel, training, and so forth for implementation of a project such as you described?
Yeah, I would say I can't say the actual return of investment right now. What I can say, because we're mid-pilot, what I can say is that it's my belief that for us as a company, we need this. We need the inventory accuracy, and when we do manual inventory, we can never reach that goal that we need to be. So for us, we need this anyway. It's like a base functionality for developing and for keeping up doing smart things. Yeah.
Yeah, difficult in our sample, I think, to pinpoint an ROI or at least a time period for ROI. But much like Johan suggests, I think the enabling technology, this is what the customer expects. And sometimes if you're considering a goal like for us, it might be regional relevance or market relevance. This is what it takes to ensure that. And I do think that there's so many other downstream savings, like the ability to relieve distressed inventory out of a location, that sort of thing, that may save you a markdown down the road, that we haven't pinpointed anything that starts with a $, but I would suggest I can't imagine that we wouldn't deliver a positive ROI within half a year.
Yeah, 6 months. Okay. Another question? Here in the front.
So I noticed throughout the talk there were side effects of customer behavior. How much attention are you delegating for client or inventory management towards customer behavior using RFID?
Should start?
Is the question?
Can you be a little bit more specific? I'm sorry, I just
Yeah,
want to
so
make
you
sure.
noticed, you mentioned that inside web portals, you can kind of guide customers to certain stores. How has RFID really affected the client behavior versus just internal management, inventory management?
So I don't, from our example specifically, I don't think we're to that point. I mean, we've been discussing, we've got a pilot. We took the most complex segment of our business and said, if we can make this work, we think we've got a chance to incorporate this kind of technology on a broader scale. So all of that is, at least for us, has been more conceptual, and we're starting to do some A/B testing on site, but I don't have any specifics to share. I'm sorry, it's a little too early for us.
Yeah, and I would say also that we are early in the stages and are just adding this as a base functionality, but we can see a lot of possibilities with customer behavior and how we can help customers find the article where it is, but that's not our focus at this point. Yeah, that's my answer.
And one thing I'd add is that if you look at big rocks in the jar as far as the ROI, the biggest rock is the fact that most retailers are operating between 60% and 80% inventory accuracy. And so once you get item level to kind of address this new era of inventory in retail, once you get that in place, what we're seeing retailers say, okay, great, I got that, it paid for the system. We're now operating completely different on how we run our fleet of stores with inventory. Now let's look at what can we do at the next level. What can we promise a customer that we never could have promised before because we were scared to death that when they got there it wasn't going to be there, to Greg and Johan's example. So this is a common thing we're seeing. A year and a half into the project, they're starting to look at some of those things. And more stakeholders are getting a hold of what this can do for them, and innovation's taking place inside the retailer. And they're coming to folks like ourselves and saying, hey, if we did this, could you guys help us with creating some different service offerings or different service level agreements or whatever with our customers? So.
Okay, got time for a couple more questions. Anyone? We got one there in the back.
Hi. Have you integrated RFID data into your ERP systems? And if so, what is the frequency that you might be updating book inventory? And if you are updating book inventory, what interrogators have you put into place to identify good counts versus bad counts?
So I'll go first because we have not to this point.
Okay, and we are, as I said, in a pilot, and in the pilot we are, we are faking automated processes, but actually it's people behind doing it manually. So in the pilot we haven't an automatic system to integrate with our ERP. But we are that, and so we have a scan each week, and the result of that scan will update our ERP. But we're doing that manually for the pilot, and we are, as we're doing it manually, first we take a look at the scan and the result. Is it reasonable? And before we push it into our ERP.
I would say that other retailers are doing it every 10 seconds. Some retailers, so basically others are doing it on every event, whether it be a stock count or whether it be a received transaction or a move. And it can be done completely automated with different, across the spectrum of different ERPs from homegrown to SAP. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I could add that we push sales data from our ERP into SML system every 5 minutes, and that's an automated process that that we finished. So an item will never be out of stock on the sales floor more than 5 minutes. Then we'll see it coming up on a list, and it's the highest priority to go get it from the back stock.
Okay, we've got time for one more question. We have a gentleman here.
So you mentioned point of sale. Are you using the RFID at point of sale or converting back to the original barcodes to do the actual point of sale transaction?
We are using barcodes for point of sale, but we update from our ERP to SML. That sale we update, but we are in the pilot. We're not using RFID at point of sale.
Yeah, and there's ways to do there. Most of our customers are not putting in point of sale readers. They're using just a SKU-based point of sale feed to us. We create a view of inventory and use that for replenishment, as Johan mentioned. Yeah. So